Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. Welcome to MFSN, the Hub's Fantasy Baseball Strategy Show, Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner, and I'm here with Casey Vlad to the Bone Scheinvold and Ross the Boss.
Hey, everybody, Ross the Boss here, coming to you live from where, Casey? La, California. And we are excited because
University of Arizona.
Baseball, Arizona State. We have baseball going on. The Dodgers got swept
Go
by
Wildcats.
the Padres. The Padres now won the series against the Dodgers, and they're not that far behind from the Dodgers, which makes me happy, Dr. Dan Ratner. I love when the Dodgers lose. I love it. I love it.
You do love it. And we still have a lot to talk about in baseball, but I do want to kind of orient everybody to what's going to be happening because soon football's here. We know the Hall of Fame games today. Is that right, Ross?
Tonight, the Hall of Fame
Tonight.
game.
Right, and that's
Go
right around the
Houston.
corner from me.
Yeah.
What is it?
Yep.
Texans, Pittsburgh,
Nope, Bears.
Bears,
The
Texans, Bears.
The Bears.
Caleb Williams will not be playing one snap, I don't think.
That doesn't surprise me. I don't think any of the starters will be.
Football, it's like I get excited for football. It's starting, and I'll hear the music tonight. I'll see a football game on television, and then 10 minutes in, I'll turn the channel because it's the most boringest football game ever in the history of sports.
It does kind of feel
Preseason
that
football.
And you won't see
Doesn't
any.
matter.
You won't see any of the stars. There's no game plan. It's just like, and I really feel like both these teams know who the roster. Maybe there's 3 roster spots that are open beginning camp, but that's it. So I mean, am I excited football's done? Yeah, we'll be watching the game. Probably not much.
Yeah, I mean, it would be kind of like instead of watching a movie, just watching a bunch of bad auditions. Although that might actually be pretty entertaining.
Yeah, it's not gonna. It won't be a pretty game. It's always
No.
a snooze fest. Casey Scheinfeld won't be watching football. He'll be watching his children's soccer practice.
In any case, I want to tell people who are tuning in for baseball what they can expect. We'll talk about baseball today. In the meantime, Casey and Ross will continue the Waiver Wire show on Tuesdays. That's 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. And they'll continue that through August to get you through the lean months. On this show, we're diving into football next week, and that's going to include previews of positions. So next week, we're going to start in on quarterback previews. The reason we can do quarterbacks so early, they don't change that much. There aren't that many big surprises, but
Whoa.
preseason.
There was an injury. The injury report today, big one, big star injury report. He's in a boot for 2 weeks, and he has planners. How do you say it, Dan?
Plantar
fasciitis.
Thank you. You guys are both doctors, so how do you say it? Quarterback for the Los Angeles Chargers is not going to be playing any preseason games. And when you have that problem, I had it twice on my foot. It's the most painful thing ever. I'd be curious to see what happens.
Well, I can cure that. Actually, I was going to make a Dan Fouts joke. You beat me to it, Case.
Yeah, Dan Fouts.
Dan Fouts has lots of plantar fasciitis. No, probably not actually. But okay, so next week we'll do quarterbacks, and then of course we'll keep it rolling with running backs, then wide receivers, and then tight ends, and that'll be once a week leading you up to the season. But in the meantime, let's talk a little bit about baseball. People are still going at it, and this is that time where you got to dig deep to stay afloat.
Yeah.
Pay attention to who's on the wire. It's a long season, and we're 4 months in. So let's first talk about baseball headlines. The trade deadline. Let's talk about that. What were the big trades, and what's the big news so far? Jump in with anything, and I'll direct conversation as well.
Well, I think the biggest trade was probably one of the last ones that happened, which was Jack Flaherty going from the Tigers to the Dodgers. He was kind of the biggest bargaining chip, and of course, the rich get richer, right? The Dodgers were able to get him for Theron Liranzo and Trey Sweeney, which are not obviously big names, and so they get some much needed insurance and didn't have to give up any high ranking or too highly rated of prospects.
I mean, Ross said this last week, or was it 2 weeks ago? He was saying the Dodgers are just going to get everybody, and it is the rich get richer. Jazz Chisholm went to the Yankees,
and then swept the Phillies.
Well, and hit 2 home runs his first game, and hit 2 home runs his first game.
No, his second game. Second game he hit 2 home runs, and then his third game he hit 2 home runs. First game he went 1 for 4 and stole a bag.
He had 2 home runs back-to-back games though, in 2 out of the 3 games.
Yeah, against the Phillies.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. I was too busy watching Eugenio Suarez homer 3 times. And I know that Ross said he was sorry he let him go. Meanwhile, Let's talk about some frustrations. I have a big frustration, and it's not just yes, it's on my team, but it's actually a broader frustration. How is Kyle Tucker out for 3 months with a bruised shin?
It's a
like,
big.
What kind of bruise is that?
Have you seen the bruise? Oh my God, it's the horse. I'm just kidding. I saw that too, and I know he's not playing.
There must have been a stress fracture or something associated with it.
I mean, I don't know what's going on with him, and I agree with you. I mean, Houston luckily back in the playoff hunt, but it's like, where is this guy? I mean, what he hasn't even touched the baseball since the injury. I mean, he's not even in like rehab.
I mean, injuries
Kyle
to
Tucker,
me are.
Where are you?
Injuries to me are just obviously injuries happen, and we root for the athletes to come back from them quickly, but they're playing a very large role in the game. They always have, but I find they're playing a bigger role than ever before, and I even know why. I'm a mind-body doctor. I know people are misdiagnosing these things. Josh Jung should have been back for the Rangers like a month and a half ago. He experienced some pain, and they get really worried about it. I'm not saying not to worry about pain at all, but the Kyle Tucker thing really jumped out at me. A bruised shin. I was like, okay, well, he'll be out for maybe a week. And it just kept going and going and going.
I hurt my shin hitting on the table a few weeks ago. I was in pain for like Casey, I think a day. I was hurt. I mean,
it can hurt. Yeah, nothing's worse than stubbing a pinky toe.
Sure, I mean that can hurt very badly for a couple minutes or maybe a day.
My tongue last week too. It was
3 months.
Yeah, I think we're going to start to see that people going on the IL for a bitten tongue.
At 50, I think it's safe to say things can knock you out for longer than they're supposed to. At 25 or however old he is now, I don't think that's a valid.
I mean, I'm telling you, what happens is these players say, I'm still having pain, and then the teams view them as assets. Of course, they are assets, but they view them that way, and they think, oh my God, we got to be extra careful. And this is just trending. I mean, eventually we'll barely be able to play anybody on the field. It's absurd. Ross, when you first pointed out that Kyle Tucker was injured, I was like, oh man, what happened? I look and I'm like, oh,
yeah, shin.
Bruised shin.
And there's no timeline. I don't know if you saw that either. There's no timeline for this guy to come back.
No, when I clicked on the link and I was like optimistic that he'll be back by September. I was like, this is the most massive bruise I've ever seen. It's just
Maybe you should
ridiculous.
fly to Houston and look at it, Dan. Maybe you can help him. I don't know. I mean, there must be.
I can definitely help him. I don't even need to look.
I mean, I just don't know what's going on. I don't know. I mean, there's been a lot of mystery injuries this year. That's one of them. And then in LA, it's not an injury, but it's a bad thing because his son's having problems. Is Freddie Freeman for the Dodgers? He's been out a whole week, and there's no timeline for him to come back. He's having, it's personal issues they call it, but it's something with his son. And the Dodgers said, just take your time. If your son is
now that's the kind of stuff that I think has gotten better. I understand that teams should totally support people with things like that. Okay, Chris Atwater said Josh Naylor had to sit out a few games for, quote, general soreness, which is something I can relate to as a 50-year-old. 50-year-olds definitely can relate to general soreness.
Yes,
and
every day.
How about Garrett Cole? How about Garrett Cole missing a start because of that excuse? Casey and I
it was general soreness.
It was general soreness, and he didn't play the first 3 months. I think he started 5 or 6 games this season, and all of a sudden he has to miss a start because he's sore. Seriously? I mean, and the Yankees are in a playoff hunt, and they need him to start when his last time he supposed to. And all of
it's
a
a
sudden,
sad commentary.
General soreness. Can you imagine telling Bob Gibson back in the '60s when he's pitching 3 innings of a season that why don't you sit this one out? I think you have general soreness. He'll laugh in your face.
He would have been like, what are you talking about? And here's the thing. I mean, we're built the same way that we always were. It's completely ridiculous that it's gone in this direction.
Now. Kids are soft. Adults are getting softer. You know what's going on.
So I totally agree with you, Ross. However, if we talk that way too much, people are going to think it's because we're old. And we're not saying that because we're old. We're saying it because we're right. Start paying attention to that.
Well, they're not mutually exclusive.
Well, they're not.
We are, in fact, old.
Old people always think they're right.
But we can be right also.
This one I've looked at very carefully, and we're right. Let's talk about other injuries or news items or trades. What are the other big things that have happened this week in baseball that you need to be paying attention to if you're a fantasy player? Anything else on your radar?
Well, there's been a lot of trades going on. a lot of little trades that are going to help teams a lot. Like even like the Arizona Diamondbacks, no one talks about because the Dodgers rule that division. They're only 5 games behind the Dodgers. I mean, they're in the playoff hunt, and no one talks about it at all except me and
And they're
Casey.
doing it with Corbin Carroll being terrible.
And Corbin Carroll,
Yeah,
who's like,
it's insane.
I mean, in my some of my leagues, I waived him because he's so bad. Of course, the redraft leagues, but he's horrible. But they picked up Josh Bell, which I think is an interesting pickup for them because they have Christian Walker, who's not Jewish. And Christian actually got on the DL like the day they got Josh Bell. So I don't know how bad Christian's injury is, but I hope bringing Josh Bell in, I think, is a big pickup for Arizona. I mean, he was swinging the bat really well in Miami. And I think that's a pickup that people are not going to really look at right now, but they will when it's a time, trust me. And of course, Jorge Soler it was traded from San Francisco to back to the Atlanta Braves, where he
Yep.
won a World Series and also was MVP of that series. I mean, Soler's back with Atlanta, and Keith and I talked about it. That's a big one too. I mean, that's a big signing, and that's going to help the Braves a lot, who are missing a lot of key opponents. I mean, they're missing half their team, and they're missing 2 All-Stars in Strider, who's supposed to be the Cy Young winner, who's out for the season, and last year's MVP is out for the season. So it's for Atlanta, it was a big signing, I think.
Yep. And meanwhile, I think you mentioned the Diamondbacks. They're really very much in contention. Them getting AJ Puck is pretty important because, my guy who I've been supporting all the time, he's completely blowing up. I was going to say he's my annoying closer of the week, Paul Sewald, but I'm not sure he's a closer. Like, I'm pretty sure he's not anymore. Would you guys agree with that? Seems like he's done.
Sewald?
Oh, yeah.
I think you're 100% right. Seawald's been blowing too many games, and the Diamondbacks. I'm telling you, they have the Dodgers. When they play the Dodgers, they beat them almost every time. I mean, it's like clockwork against the Dodgers, and now the Padres are beating the Dodgers. So I know the Dodgers are missing some key guys. Some guy named Mookie Betts, right, Casey? I never heard of this guy, but he's supposed to be good.
But he's got a cool name. He's no Mookie Wilson.
And Yamamoto, who's hasn't pitched in 2 months. So all these guys are hurt for the Dodgers, and it's showing the standings. I mean, they're losing ground every week, and I love it.
Yeah, but they've been hurt for months, and they're still in first. So it also shows you how deep they are. I mean, some other trades that I think were impactful and maybe a little more under the radar was the Astros in both directions. The Astros traded for Ross's favorite Blue Jay pitcher, Yusei Kikuchi, who could provide them some quality innings. I don't think from a fantasy perspective he's going to be terribly relevant there. You don't want a soft tossing left-hander in Minute Maid Park or whatever it's called now because of those Crawford boxes. But a guy we talked about forever on the waiver wire show is Joey Loperfido, the right fielder, first baseman, left-handed power hitter with a little bit of speed for the Astros. Well, that's who went back to Toronto, and Toronto is in kind of a rebuild mode. So that's somebody who you could probably put on your roster who will probably get playing time the rest of the year and could provide you sneaky stats in that outfield spot or first base spot. He's not going to play a lot of first base unless they're giving Vladimir some DH spots, but he can provide. And then another prospect was Connor Norby, who I've talked about a lot in Baltimore, who I thought should have gotten the call over Jackson Holiday because of how consistent he's been. Well, he was traded to the Marlins, and the Marlins have already put him on the 25-man roster for the major. So he's going to get run in Miami for the rest of the year. So you can find hidden gems, certainly in keeper leagues or dynasty leagues, but also in redraft leagues. Like, keep an eye on these guys. If they're getting hot, they have the skill set where they can contribute the last few weeks before the playoffs.
Well, that's the other thing is at this point in the season, if a player's hot for 3 weeks, it's a huge amount of your season that's left. So you really got to be paying attention to who's on fire right now. I do want to mention one other trade, which I don't even know whether to be excited about it, but it's the kind of trade that the Guardians would make. It's not surprising to me. They got Lane Thomas. They needed an outfielder. I think it's a great trade for them. They don't trade for much, but Lane Thomas is, that's a pretty good get. Let's talk about hot players. Actually, Chris Atwater has one more comment on trades, and then we'll switch to hot players.
I love this guy. What do you say?
We all love Chris Atwater. He says, I think one of the bigger post-trade deadline stories is the green light / keys to the car for relief pitcher closer Chad Green in Toronto, a guy Ross the boss brought up weeks ago. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, we didn't see as many closers get dealt as we thought. I mean, we saw a few here and there. But yeah, you got to look at those guys in those revamped bullpens who are going to get a spot. Chad Green was a dynamite reliever for many years for the Yankees. He closed for them when other people were hurt. I mean,
so he's got the experience.
He's got the experience. He's got the kind of mentality to be a closer, and he'll get plenty of chances if Toronto can learn how to hit.
But I will say, it seemed to me this trade deadline was a little less active than other ones. I think
it was crazy. Like the last 4 hours.
Lots of little trades.
Yeah, I mean,
the one I didn't understand.
I were on the air, and it was crazy. It was crazy. Every 20 minutes, my phone was getting ping, ping, ping. I mean, there was like these deals.
It was active, but it was smaller deals. Yeah, go ahead, Casey.
Yeah,
there's no all-stars. There's no all-stars that I.
Yeah, outside of Jack Flaherty, but. Eloy Jimenez was traded from the White Sox to the Orioles. The Orioles, who have this glut of bats, and everybody was talking about them needing to move some of their young guys, like they did with Connor Norby, to try to bring in pitching. And they trade for an oft-injured, high on the potential scale kind of outfielder DH guy, which didn't make a lot of sense to me. But hey, they're in first place, so they're obviously smarter than I am right now. But I was curious how he would fit, considering they had such a glut of outfielders with Cowser and Kerstead and Santander and Mullins. If they haven't gotten rid of him yet.
I do think teams that are planning to make a deep run, sometimes they're adding guys who they're not even going to play that much.
Yeah, he might just be a bench bat.
Somebody gets injured, or you need a pinch hitter at the right moment. They've got it. It's a totally different season.
I haven't looked at the numbers close enough to know if he mashes lefties and that the team as a whole was struggling against lefties, if that was their thinking. But it surprised me with the makeup of their team that they wouldn't have tried to get more arms than bats.
All right, so let's talk about a couple players that you can look out for. We'll do hitters first, and then we'll go over to pitchers. But I want to look at some hitters that are still probably flying under the radar, because one of the things is this late in the season, if people are just looking at overall numbers, who's a good player to pick up, they're going to miss players that are just red hot right now. So I pulled up a list of the last 30 days and the top players, and some of them, their preseason ranking is insane compared to what's happening here. One is a guy you mentioned 2 weeks ago, I think, Ross, Lawrence Butler, or as I call him, Larry Butler.
Yeah, we talked about him.
His preseason rank, 1,039. In the last 30 days,
top
his
5,
rank
right?
is fourth. Yes.
Yeah. Casey.
Yeah, and it's not overloaded on recent, because in the past 2 weeks he's ranked 10th. So, but he's still batting 400. So it's like his numbers have gone down, and he's still batting 400.
He's going to cool off, but at this point in the season, especially if you're playing in head-to-head leagues, you need to scoop up guys like these.
I'm surprised Rooker wasn't traded. Rooker for the A's was not traded somewhere.
That was surprising,
because he's been on fire, and the A's will trade anybody they can because they don't really care until they move to Vegas. And Lawrence Butler, I mean, he's another guy that's just been on fire in Oakland. I mean, he's been mashing the ball. I mean, I just don't understand why nobody else would want to go after him. But obviously, they want to keep this guy. I mean, they high hopes. But he's been on fire. But that's a good one. Keep going. Who else is on your list?
So here's another guy, Brenton Doyle. I know we've recognized that he's been doing it for a while, but my point is with him more that he's keeping it up.
Yeah,
it's very clear.
Home run last night. What's how many home runs does he have for the season? Just curious.
Well, he has 9 in the last 30 days. Let me check how many he has for the season. But I mean, he's having
is
quite
he a rookie, Casey?
a year.
I can't remember. Is he?
No, I don't believe. No, he's not a rookie. But
I don't think he qualifies as a rookie. But he essentially is a rookie. He has 18 homers on the season, but he has 9 in the last month.
And how many? But he also has speed, so he has double-digit steals, I think, too.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's gonna be a top 10 fantasy player, Nick, and he'll be drafted in the top 20 at least. Casey Sheffield, trust me.
Now, I wish Uncle Ted was here because he's been talking this guy up all the time. But Colt Keith has been really, really good of late.
Yep.
You guys notice this?
He's cooled off in the last week, but
it
can happen in the last in a week or so. But still,
yeah,
Here's another
he's
one
been
that
on fire. I'll give you one and tell me
Yeah,
if he's
go
on
ahead.
your list.
Give me one.
Jeff McNeil for the Mets. The Mets have been on fire. They've been hitting the ball pretty well. Where's McNeil on your list? I mean, every time I would turn the TV on, he's getting an RBI or a home run. This guy. I mean, he's unbelievable.
I'm looking deeper into the list to see where he is
He's not.
because
Wow, he's not there.
no, he's here. He's 45th, which is
Okay.
still pretty good. You know, that's definitely pretty good. Here's another one. I think you guys talked about him in the waiver wire show because I think he was actually the cover boy. But Tyler Fitzgerald.
Yep.
I mean,
Fitzy. Yep.
what is this guy for real? What did you say about him?
You know, Giants are not known for hitting. I mean, that ballpark is the pitcher's ballpark, but this guy found a way to hit home runs and get RBIs. You know, we talked about him 2 weeks ago. I mean, this guy is just on fire. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on him till the end of the season. So right now, pick him up. But I don't.
I just say pick him up and run with it. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
I'll look at minor league numbers to see.
I'm sure you have Xavier Edwards there somewhere on your list from Miami.
I was going to say him too because he's a guy that I'm like,
You
who is
last
who is
night
this?
too.
And because he's speed guy. So if you have 3 weeks left in the season, 3 or 4 steals oftentimes can get you 2 or 3 full rotisserie points because steals are so bunched together. So those are the guys I tend to really enjoy.
I of course mentioned Eugenio Suarez, which Ross basically predicted, and his 3 homer night pads his stats a lot, but he's way up there. So I mean, there's just always these guys. This is just a tool that you can use to figure out who are players really worth scooping up. I mean, if they're playing this well for 30 days, their stats may not show it. A guy like Juan Yepez, I'm not particularly excited about him because we've seen him before, but he is hitting the ball well, so you got to consider it. I'd probably rather, pick up a guy like Lawrence Butler, who's just completely on fire.
And this is a time where it's usually for those that are willing to kind of keep their nose to the grindstone and in a competitive position in their league, the bottom 5 or 6 teams in most leagues right now don't even check their lineups anymore. They don't go to the waiver wire. They don't adjust their IL positions. They don't, you can, if they're beating you just by a little bit in these different categories, because they're going to have some success, you can catch them if you're diligent and really focused on working the waiver wire and working your roster, because everybody who is not in a position to make the playoffs or win their league is moved on to football. Let's be honest,
100%.
And so you can take advantage of that if you're consistent and really focused on your baseball team.
Half of your league is probably checked out by now. It happens every time. All right, let's move over to pitchers, guys that you can find that are under the radar, partly because their numbers really don't look so good. I mean, as an example, we all know who Blake Snell is. We also know that we maybe can't trust him, but he's had a great month, and his numbers overall are terrible. So there's a lot of people who are not going to be scooping him up.
Interesting thing about Blake Snell is he goes so shallow in games that he doesn't have any wins. He has like less than a 1 ERA.
No, if you're looking for wins or quality starts, Blake Snell's not your guy.
No,
I mean, he's so inefficient as you pointed out.
He pitches 5 innings, then they snap him out 5-6 innings, and he won't.
Well, he's already at 900 pitches then, though. That's the problem.
It's kind of funny that we thought it was so strange that the Rays removed him in that World Series game, but it's like he had gone a full inning past what he usually did. I think they should have kept throwing him out there.
When I was there. Trust me, I was there physically. I watched it.
I remember you jumping after the event.
As soon as that happened, I said the Dodgers just won the World Series when they pulled him out, and I was right.
Yep. Here's another guy that I think people have taken notice, but it's still worth noting. Taj Bradley has been really, really good.
Yeah.
For a month.
Ross and I talked about him when he first got called up and said he's a must add. So, this is a guy who was great 2 years ago and was a pedigree kind of guy, and some injuries derailed him, but it's not that he lost his stuff. It wasn't the shoulder injury where you're worried about whether he's going to recover. And he's come back and been the same dominant kind of pitcher that he was.
Meanwhile, look at Dylan Cease. Second best player overall. Guys with that kind of upside, a lot of times you just got to take your chances on them and hope that it really goes well. How about this guy, Tyler Phillips? I don't know what to make of him. I'll tell you one thing I don't like, and this won't surprise Ross. 6.84 Ks per 9 inning over the last 30 days.
Doesn't pass.
He
your
ranks
test.
16th overall, but it just feels like not a recipe for success. But let me ask you guys what you think about Tyler
Pitches
Phillips.
for the Phillies. Yeah, keep going.
That's
I
what
don't
thought.
think I think you ride him while he's hot. He's not somebody I would invest heavily in anything other than.
Plays on a good team. He'll get run support once in a while. He'll burn some innings for you, but that's it.
I also like Bailey Ober. I mean,
I liked him at the start of the year for Minnesota. Yeah,
I know you did, but I mean, he's performing beyond what his overall numbers are now, and that's really what you want to look for.
Yeah.
All right, are there players that you would want to just get rid of at this point? Let's put it this way: there are players that are slumping that are great players. I'm not going to get rid of Adley Rutschman, but his last month has been terrible. It's been
I think
really bad.
I think if you could get something for Tyler Glass now I would get rid of him.
Yeah, just because he's pitched
pitched more than he has ever before, and in the last month his ERA is like a 5, so he's showing it. But his name and the Dodgers make him still sexy to certain people,
right?
And so I would try to flip him in a redraft.
Redraft only, folks. Don't, if it's dynasty or anything else, don't.
No, obviously not dynasty, but
Corbin Carroll. I think my patience has ran out. I mean, I know he's an all-star last year. I know he had a great season last year, but this year his power numbers are horrible. I mean, there's so many guys on waiver wire that are having better years than Corbin Carroll. I mean, do you keep him and just ride it out for the rest of the season, or do you try to save your season and try to pick somebody else up? I mean,
I think at this point in the season, if you're within striking distance, you got to maximize your roster for now. There's not in a redraft league. I mean, obviously in a keeper or dynasty league, not going anywhere. But similar thing with Julio Rodriguez with that high ankle sprain. I don't know what he's. I might hang on to him. Maybe. I mean, he's in an IL spot, so that makes it easier. But even so, if you really need somebody, you got to go for it with what's out there. We've talked about Matt Olson.
Yeah, we've thrown him under the bus enough.
I think he had 2 home runs yesterday, guys. What do you?
Sure,
2 home runs.
But so did Steve Balboni a few times in his career. It's not somebody I'd want to have.
I think, but Olson, look at his career. Look how many home runs he has every year. He's
right,
pick it up in August.
But he could also strike out the rest of the week.
And what about? And by the way, this isn't necessarily. It's not necessarily all about do we just dump this guy. It could also be about just benching. It's just like, you know what? I've had enough of this. Adolis Garcia. He's been killing teams all year.
God, what's he
he's got to be on the bench right now.
Yeah,
I mean, do you cut him?
No, because
I think you can't cut somebody with that upside.
Such a streaky player that if you see him get hot, he could go 7 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 14 RBIs the last 6 games of the year.
Yeah, you gotta hang on to him.
You know, he's one of those guys who he would be on my bench until he had a couple good games in a row. But
how about this one? I traded for Bryce Harper. And in the last month, he's batting 149.
He's been tough, but he's another one who
I'm not worried about him overall. But it just
he's another one who can turn it on in one game and suddenly.
Ratner curse. As soon as Ratner gets a player like that, downhill.
I mean, people should be paying attention to
Phillies fans everywhere are booing him.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I was in Philadelphia yesterday at Lincoln Financial Field, and that's all they could talk about was
they were just booing me. Yep. I've been picketed before. I know.
People are very angry in Philadelphia about Dr. Dan Ratner right now.
Actually, people are just very angry in Philadelphia. I've lived there for
we lived there a long time.
Oh, that's right. You guys are roommates, lovers. But you know what? I enjoy Philadelphia too. I think it's a great town. Great sports town, angry fans.
They're passionate.
They're passionate. I don't know. I mean, we were there he was 99 to 04. I was 98 to 03. And it was when the Sixers went to the finals. The Eagles were in back-to-back Super Bowls. The Phillies, I think, were battling with the Mets there for some divisions.
The Eagles were in back-to-back Super Bowls then? I don't recall that.
That was Terrell Owens and Donovan McNabb. I don't know if they were in back-to-back NFC championships. I'm not sure if they
Super Bowl. They went to one Super Bowl then.
Yeah. But and you would think that they had the worst sports teams on the face of the earth, the way they talked about these people every day. Like Allen Iverson had maybe the greatest playoff run ever watching him. That's when he stepped over Tyronn Lue, if you remember, in the finals.
Yep.
And I mean, and they had Dikembe Mutombo and that whole team. And it was they hammered them every day, regardless of whether they win or lost.
No matter how good they are. It's kind of, to me, the opposite of Browns fans. Browns fans, it's terrible. The team is terrible. And they're like, I think this is the year. I'm like, this is not the year.
No, the worst fans in the world. Every year they're going to be in the Super Bowl. Every year they say the same thing, and it drives me crazy. Worse. This is when I say, you're going to say, "Oh, you're right, Ross." New York Jets. Every year they always say, "We're going to the Super Bowl."
Oh, I think Cowboys are worse.
The New York, all the New York press says they're great, and then all of a sudden they're 500. So
I think what you're saying is the most delusional fans, because they
delusional.
All right, because there are far worse fan bases than the Jets. I think
they're not bad fan bases. They just every year they say they're going to the Super Bowl. It's like every year the Jets do.
Oh wow. I mean,
including this year.
That's a bet you're gonna lose unless it's Super Bowl III. It's just not gonna happen. Are there any other batters that you would mention that are just, it's time to unload? We'll move to pitchers and then we'll shift to football for a little bit.
Batters that I would unload. I don't know if there's some I would unload.
Remember, there's a lot of leagues that their trade deadline hasn't passed, including ours. So like our dynasty league. So you could still unload them through trade.
Right. I mentioned so many players. I mean, all of a sudden, when I say a player like Cedric Mullins, all of a sudden he becomes hot. It's like
he's been hitting the ball lately.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like it's a very tough decision you have to make with these guys, especially guys like Corbin Carroll. But I'm picking on him today. I don't know why, but he's somebody that it's just how much time do you give him? I mean, it's August 1st. It's time to cut cord. Somebody that's on fire right now. I watch him play because I'm an Angel fan. Is Ward? Can't remember
Taylor Ward.
Name. Taylor Ward of the Angels. That guy's been on fire. He's been hitting the ball really hard and far.
He's a very streaky player, but it's always good to have his good
right
streak.
Now, if you can pick him up, pick him up. I mean, he's the one that I picked him up in our league, and he's been killing it. And so is Jeff McNeil. I mean, there's some guys that are just streaking, and it's time to pick some of these guys up. It just depends who's.
It's such a short. It's a much shorter season now, and you've got a lot of people not paying attention. So there's a lot of opportunity to pick up these hot bats, and particularly hot bats because pitching is a little harder to predict. But let's talk about a couple of pitchers about whether you would trade them or not. Freddie Peralta, trade or keep? I'm always a trade with Freddie Peralta.
I know. I'm a keeper because of his strikeouts.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I like his strikeouts, but
it's tough. Yeah,
he's such an inning burner guy. I mean, he pitched 6-7 innings almost every game.
I mean, I would definitely trade Logan Webb at this point if you can get anything for him. I'm not sure if you can.
Would you trade Logan Gilbert at this point?
He's only had one bad start, hasn't he? It was just really bad.
But it was really bad. Yeah. No,
Gilbert,
it's true. He's only had one bad start. Wow. Yeah, it was a really bad start.
Gilbert great by like because I think Seattle's going to win that. I still think they'll win that division. I don't know why. Something tells me. I just have a feeling. But Gilbert,
I would deal Garrett Cole at this point.
I mean, especially because with that name value, you can get a lot for him.
You got to cash it. If you look at his stats, you're like, oh my god, I would really want this guy on my team. No, I mean, especially with the soreness issue and everything else going on with the guy. No, I don't want Garrett Cole.
I'll tell you somebody who I'd like to deal for right now is Chris Sale. Obviously, he's been great, but I just think there's a lot of people who are kind of thinking in the same way that we think about Tyler Glass now. How long is this going to last? How long is this going to last? And they want to cash in on it. I think those are the kind of players that you can go for. All right, anything else to add before we shift to football, guys?
There's a really quick football. You just brought up Chris Sale, and I'll bring up the other Cy Young hopeful, which I actually have a little bet on, is this guy named Paul Skeens who pitches in Pittsburgh. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He's LSU.
I don't know him. I know a Paul Skeens.
Yeah.
Skeens, excuse me, has a great mustache. I'm trying to grow the mustache like him. But do you think he'll win the Cy Young? In all seriousness, I mean, every time he pitches, it's like Paul Skeens Day. I mean, it's like the talk of baseball the day he pitches. Do you think he'll win the Cy Young between us three? I mean, Casey, what do you think? Cy Young or no Cy Young?
No, I think. Well,
I think it's hard. I mean, he hasn't pitched that many innings, but By the end of the year,
Okay.
he will probably have arrived at that. It's going to be between him and Chris Sale, I think.
I'm going to put my money on Chris
pitcher?
Sale.
What was the last pitcher that people talked about and were excited every time he pitched? I mean, I can't remember until like Fernando, rookie-wise. Fernando Valenzuela's rookie season, it was people got excited about when he pitched.
Well, Roger Clemens, maybe.
Doc
I don't know if it was
Gooden. Doc Gooden as a rookie.
Oh, you're just talking about as a rookie. Well, Doc
This is
Gooden.
a rookie.
Yeah.
Doc Gooden's a good one. But
Fernando.
this guy.
Yeah, you're right.
Steven Strasburg was that way when he came up.
That's a good one. San Diego State. I like that one. That's good. But it's Dr. Dan Ratner, skis. Cy Young or no Cy Young?
I'm going to vote no. I think Chris Sale's going to get it.
Okay, so Casey.
It's going to be close.
I'm the only one that says Paul's going to win, but we'll see what happens.
I'd love to see it. I'll tell you, somebody who's not going to win the Cy Young is Ranger Suarez. His numbers for the season still look good, but man, he's been bad.
No, he's not going to win.
It's time to dump him. All right, let's shift to football for a little bit because we're going to start in next week. As I mentioned, next week we're going to preview quarterbacks. The week after that will be running backs, then wide receivers, then tight ends. We'll do it one per week. Casey and Ross will still be manning the waiver wire show for baseball for most of August. So keep paying attention for that if you need information there. You can always ask baseball questions if you want. But at this point in the season, is there anything you guys are doing to prepare? Or are you just sitting back and waiting a bit? What's your preparation strategy like? Let's start to get into it.
Mine is mostly at this point because we don't have drafts for a few weeks. Now, our dynasty draft we did back in April, or May, maybe, I'm not sure. But for redraft and those keeper leagues, what I'm doing now is just following the reporters I trust on the different teams, either on social media or going online and looking at stuff, watching the position battles, looking at coaching changes, schedules, all of that, just trying to get any advantage I can. Certainly, I've started to break up some tiers of players. Like, here are the top tier of quarterbacks. I want to try to get one of them at some point in the draft. You have to decide what your draft strategy is going to be, especially with running backs, because there's the zero running back strategy, the hero running back strategy, the anchor running back strategy. There's all these different strategies that they talk about, and you have to understand what they are pretty well and then prepare your draft based off of that stuff and get a sense of where you think you can get the best players and the best value.
Ross, how about you?
Listen to Sirius XM. Their football coverage is great. They cover every camp. They give you a lot of insight. They have like 3 or 4 channels. They have the NFL channel. They have the Grid channel. They have Fantasy Football channel. They have really good channels and really good information on what's happening in camps. They have reporters that actually go to the camps and report from there. So I try to listen to that because that's information that's actually current. I don't look at the fantasy football magazines. Throw those away. Those are printed 6 months ago, so they don't give you really anything that's vital at all except lists. But those lists change like crazy. And, you got to see where the rookies stand up. I mean, for example, the Giants drafted that kid from LSU, Naylor.
Malik Neighbors.
Neighbors. I mean, Neighbors is going to be the number 1 receiver for the Giants, I think. But I got to see where he lines up. I don't know where they're going to. I have no idea.
Yeah, he's going to line up, from what I can read, as the receiver, the main receiver, and he's going to be a target monster because who else do they have? Waller retired.
No one.
And then, Saquon's in Philadelphia.
Yep. And
you're talking about rookie Jalen Hyatt and Darius Slayton aren't really guys who strike fear into anybody. So Neighbors could get a 45% target share, and even in a bad offense, that can be really productive.
So a guy like that, Casey and I will put higher on our list. Casey being a Giant fan, I might try to get him early just so I can dangle him in front of Casey's face once in a while. And then we got new guys. We got new guys that are quarterbacks. Like, let's say in Atlanta, you got Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins is going to make that offense a lot better. I mean, this guy knows how to throw the ball. Look what he did with Justin Jefferson. I think he'll do the same thing with Kyle Pitts. I think Kyle Pitts is going to
that's what I was going to say. You have to look at what he's done for tight ends. Like, look at TJ Hawkinson when he went there.
And that's a good point just generally. What you want to see not only which players have shifted to which teams, but how it affects systems. So, like, Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta Does it affect Kirk Cousins that much? Not really. He's going to do the same thing. The guy it really affects is Kyle Pitts.
And
I think
Bijan Robinson.
And Bijan Robinson. The skill players on Atlanta go way up from that. So you got to know the context. The one thing I'll add, and then we'll wrap up here, that I'm doing right now that I just always do.
Can't wait to
even
hear
if you've
this.
been, even if you've been in the same leagues for years, you got to look back and think about what the settings are like in that league and how to value players because of it. There's so many players who are like, this is going to be a big year. I need to have Patrick Mahomes. And then I'm like, okay, well, what's your league like? And they're like, I'm in a 10-team league and it's a 1-quarterback league. And I'm like, why are you going after Mahomes?
I won't draft Mahomes until the 10th round.
Right, because like there's so many good quarterbacks out there. So you have to know your settings. You also have to know the types of positions and when they come into value. If there's a rookie running back, that's way more valuable than any rookie anywhere. If they're a starting rookie running back, especially if they were drafted highly, that's huge value right away. Whereas rookie wide receivers, what I like to do is I do like to have them on my team, but I know that they're more of a stash at the beginning. They're usually not going to explode out of the gate. Start to watch from the second half. So,
and also, go ahead.
No, you, Ross.
So let's say I've done a few best ball drafts already. Best ball, if you know what it is, that's when you draft a team and you don't do anything, just sit on the team, and basically it's the best player at that position gets points, and there's no trades, there's no waiver wire. You just sit there. You can do it on Yahoo. It's kind of fun. I suggest to do it if guys are in leagues for practice. But basically, the number 1 pick has been McCaffrey in every league I've done. And then the number 2 pick has been everybody from Brown for the Lions to Chase to Jefferson to CeeDee Lamb. Who do you guys suggest? I know you guys been following football for a while. Who's your number 2 pick if you had to pick somebody right now in fantasy football?
Okay, so I'll let you go first. That way I can think more.
Yeah, the number 2 pick. I take McCaffrey.
Is it PPR or non-PPR?
Fine.
PPR,
let's say.
All right, let's say PPR.
I gave you the 5 I gave you 4 guys that I like. Well, go ahead.
I like Jamar Chase, to be honest.
That's a good one.
The only reason I wouldn't put him next. The only reason I don't put him next is his injury. He's injury prone. I put CeeDee Lamb next. That would be my pick.
CeeDee Lamb is consensusly number 2. I'm going to a dark horse. Not really a dark horse, but I like that Brown for the Lions. I just think every game last year.
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I mean, he's awesome.
I mean, he's my number 2. But again, I'm the guy that's saying the Lions are going to the Super Bowl. And I also said
I also wouldn't be upset if somebody said, and this might is Jonathan Taylor.
I get worried about his injury.
A rebound year?
I mean, 3 years ago, he was consensus number 1. He got hurt. Yeah. But
it's true. But 3 years ago, who was his quarterback?
Was it Matt Ryan back then? Like it wasn't anybody who struck fear into.
It wasn't Andrew Luck. I think he was.
I saw him. You guys see him at the Olympics? He was at the opening. They showed him. He was in the stands watching.
No, I've just been enamored with Snoop Dogg and Flavor Flav at the Olympics. Those are the 2 guys who I'm enjoying the most.
I'm done with Snoop Dogg. Every time I turn the TV on, he's Snoop Dogg's.
I can't. I eat that up. So that's fine.
Sick of it. No more Snoop Dogg.
All right, guys, let's wrap up here. But again, waiver wire show on baseball will continue throughout August with Casey and Ross. That's 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. This show on Thursdays, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific also. But we're going to start previewing football teams next week. We're going to dive in with quarterbacks, it's the position that changes the least. So we're going to do it on the early side. But, leagues are drafting at different times. And we're going to draft kind of towards the end of August for our redraft league. But be prepared. We're going to do football stuff, and we look forward to talking about it with you. All right, guys, tune in next week. Good